This is the Allegheny River. After flowing 300 miles, it ends a short distance from here, where it joins with the Monongahela River, and the Ohio River begins. And that's where Carol and I will begin, at the western end of the Great Allegheny Passage. We'll bicycle the Gap and the C&O Canal Towpath to Washington, D.C. We're looking forward to the adventure and the beauty and the history of this region. And we're looking forward to another tour with each other. Carol says she's ready, so join us. The Great Allegheny Passage begins by heading upstream on the Monongahela River. Its headwaters are in the beautiful mountains of West Virginia, and it enters Pittsburgh from the south. In many ways, this journey is about rivers: the Allegheny, Monongahela, Youghiogheny, Castleman, Potomac, as much as trails. We'll follow the routes along rivers used by Native Americans, European settlers, canal boats, and railroads, and now bicycles. The Monongahela was the epicenter of the growth of America's industrial might, as Andrew Carnegie and others built massive steel mills and railroads for moving steel and coal along its banks. We're crossing the Hot Metal Bridge. There was a time when molten iron was moved across it from blast furnaces on the north side of the river to furnaces on the south side, where it was converted to steel. That's hard to imagine today. We delayed this trip by 3 days due to rain. Just one of the benefits of being retired. It's early October, and if we controlled the weather, we couldn't make a better day. These are known simply as the stacks. They are the most visible remnants of Andrew Carnegie's massive steel plant in the community of Homestead. It was once the largest steel mill in the world. In 1892, workers went on strike here. The company hired armed guards to take control of the mill. Thousands of local residents came to support the workers. Shots were fired, fires were set, people were wounded and killed. In the end, everyone went back to work with little gain. Not much remains of the Homestead Steel Mill today. It's been replaced by nice neighborhoods, shopping centers, an amusement park, condos along the river, and this trail. Homestead, like much of the region, has had to reinvent itself. Carnegie developed a way to cheaply and efficiently mass-produce steel rails for the railroads that were connecting the country. He made millions. And communities sprang up all along the rail lines. As the miles pass, we're seeing the landscape becoming more and more wooded, but it's evident that industry is still important here. Carol and I have done day rides on parts of the Gap, and we're looking forward to spending more time in the beautiful Pennsylvania hills and forests. As we cross it again, we're saying goodbye to the Monongahela River. McKeesport is on the other side. That's where we begin following the Youghiogheny River into the region known as the Laurel Highlands. Well, we got a late start this morning, and with dusk approaching, it's pretty clear we won't make it to our intended campsite. I noticed a small sign about the Dervaux Cemetery, and I think it said that camping and water are available. Carol's getting me excited to sleep in a cemetery. Me too. The Dervaux Hiker-Biker Campground is actually next to the old cemetery. It has a few well-built Adirondacks, water, nice outhouses, fire rings, and firewood. It's everything we could ask for, all provided by the good people of the Mon-Yacht Trail Council, and it's free. A little piece of heaven right next to the Allegheny River. I'm up early, so I have time to check out the cemetery. It's good to see that someone is still placing flags on the graves of veterans who died nearly 200 years ago. I'm really glad we found this place. And so we're off. Foggy mornings are pretty common in the river valleys. It's cool, very quiet, and peaceful. It feels a bit mysterious. The fog will dissipate as the sun rises above the hillsides. The first section of abandoned rail line that would become the Gap was acquired in the 70s. Over the next 30-plus years, several organizations and their volunteers worked to acquire additional sections, repair bridges, and much more. The Great Allegheny Passage was completed in 2013. So much joy, so much beauty because of their efforts. Thank you, whoever you are. An ancient people known as the Monongahela culture lived along the Monongahela, Youghiogheny, and Castleman rivers, beginning about the year 1000. They resided in villages and semi-permanent structures. Corn was an important crop for them, and they traded with other native groups. By the early 1600s, before the arrival of European settlers, they were gone. The headwaters of the Youghiogheny are near Backbone Mountain, love that name, on the West Virginia-Maryland border. That's really close to the headwaters of the North Branch of the Potomac. This arch is in Connellsville, PA. A few free Adirondacks are available here, too. The Youghiogheny is a really pretty river as it winds its way through steep rocky hillsides and thick forests. On summer days, it's often full of canoers and kayakers. The Yacht has some pretty serious Class 4 and 5 whitewater in Maryland. The river is a popular whitewater destination here in Pennsylvania because of its more friendly Class 3 rapids, but those are further upstream. The hills are getting higher as we ride east into the Laurel Highlands and Allegheny Mountains. It's those high ridges that the builders of the C&O Canal were hoping to cross and connect the Ohio River with the Potomac. The Yacht is about to make a hairpin turn, giving us the pleasure of crossing it twice, just before we reach the small town of Ohiopyle. Ohiopyle is in the middle of the action. The rapids begin here and cyclists on the Gap Trail pass right through it. It's sort of an outdoor person's dream town. In addition, Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, Falling Water, is just a couple of miles up the road. When George Washington was a young officer, he was searching for a water route to the French Fort Duquesne, at the point in present-day Pittsburgh, where we began this trip. He and his men were traveling by raft when they came upon these falls. They abandoned the rafts and made their way on foot. Washington wrote that the Youghiogheny can never be made navigable. Morning in Confluence, Pennsylvania, and day 3 without a shower. Our neighbors for the night are from Texas. They flew in to ride the Gap and C&O. Nice guys all. Our first encounter with the Castleman River. Our time along the Youghiogheny is over. We'll be following it now. Mitch's Fuel and Food seems to be a popular spot. Pancakes and sausage and maybe motor oil are on the menu. Breakfast was good. so many festivals in the fall. It's Pumpkin Fest time in the park in Confluence. Everyone's really friendly and ready to help us keep our cholesterol and blood sugar levels up. We see it as our contribution to the local economy. I can't remember when the asphalt ended, but it was many miles back. It will be pretty much unpaved the rest of the way to DC. Happy for the wide tires. The Gap Trail is never steep, but for the first 120 miles you gain elevation and you are always pedaling. We'll be rewarded for that. This is the forest we're passing through. It's full of white-tailed deer, squirrels, birds, and dozens of species of trees. You can really be alone here and hear nothing but the wind in the trees. It's good for the soul. The town of Myersdale is a popular overnight stop on the Gap. It has pretty much anything you might need, and it's a nice little community. It's a foggy morning at the Maple Festival Park campground. We're sharing it with a dozen other tents. You pay for the campsite at the quaint Donjus Drive-In restaurant, which is convenient because they serve dinner and breakfast too. While waiting for a takeout breakfast for Carol, I sat down with Steve from New York City. The trail is just one leg of his walking journey across the U.S. Good luck, Steve. Damien and Nina from South Carolina are in our campground too. This is their first bike tour. We'll play leapfrog with them on the trail for the next several days. These three came from Fairbanks, Alaska to do this trip. They're disappointed that the leaves aren't more colorful, but they always seem to be having fun. Maybe the Alaskans shouldn't give up hope on the color. Rhododendron is really prevalent along the trail, so thick in places you couldn't walk through it. Mountain laurel's Pennsylvania state flower, and it's a similar looking plant, but the blossoms are not. Mountain laurel blooms in May, and that could make for a really beautiful ride. Several landmarks will be coming up in quick succession. Just one of those corny pictures you have to take at the Eastern Continental Divide. Rainfall on my side of the yellow line flows into the Gulf of Mexico. Any rain that lands on Carol's side will reach the Atlantic. The 3,291-foot Big Savage Tunnel is a marvel. It was built by the Western Maryland Railway in 1912. Legend has it that it's named after Thomas Savage, a surveyor who was stranded in the Allegheny Mountains. Savage offered to be food for his starving companions, but they were all rescued before they were tempted to take him up on his offer. Hey, whatever it takes to get a tunnel named after you. So what is the Mason-Dixon line? It was originally drawn to end a land dispute, but today it simply marks the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. We've gained elevation for 120 miles. We're going to lose it all in the next 20. This is why we ride bicycles. Cumberland, Maryland has a really nice downtown, and they roll out the welcome mat for bike riders passing through. All flavors of bike riders. In fact, it's so nice that we've decided to leave the tent packed and stay in a hotel and have a proper shower. This plaque marks the spot where the Gap Trail and the C&O Canal Towpath meet. And so we begin Chapter 2. This is our first view of the Potomac River. We'll ride along it for 180 miles. Ouch! We've learned pretty quickly that we're not on the Gap Trail anymore. The C&O is rougher and muddier, but we're expecting the scenery to make up for that. Construction on the C&O Canal began in the 1820s. The owners planned to reach the Ohio River, but they never made it beyond Cumberland. Most of the back-breaking labor was provided by immigrants from Western Europe, who worked dangerous jobs for long hours and little pay. The towpath is often just a narrow strip sandwiched between the canal and the river. The planners of the canal faced a dilemma. They could continue building along the Potomac for 6 winding miles and carve the towpath into the rocky cliffs, or dig a 3,000-foot tunnel. They chose the tunnel. Using picks and shovels and black powder, workers cut their way through shale and built the Pawpaw Tunnel. And they lined it with bricks. It took 14 years. Thousands of canal boats passed through this tunnel during its 75-year run. The C&O closed in 1924, and so did a chapter in American history. We never expected to have camping spots to ourselves. Carol and I will share the stars, the sounds of insects, owls, and the Potomac River with only each other. Some things never get old, like an October morning campsite. This is what caffeine addiction looks like. We've always been road cyclists, but Carol's handling this chunky gravel pretty well. I don't know if there's a name for this section of the towpath, but we could ride here forever. Anything biting out there?
I had a good bite just a minute ago.
So, what did I say about October mornings? This river winds its way like a snake, so a headwind in the morning is likely to be a tailwind by lunch. Carol and I did our first bike tour a long time ago. That one and others have given us some of our best memories. But it's harder now for sure, and I do wonder how much longer we can do this. We've been lucky with our health, but time marches on. For now though, on this ride, we're having a great time and feeling kinda young again. We learned it's a thing to take your photo next to the mile marker that corresponds to your age. So here we go. The Potomac has become rocky as we approach Harpers Ferry. Wooden barges could never navigate this. It's evident why the canal was built. Be forewarned, getting from the Maryland to the West Virginia side of the Potomac is a bit of a challenge with loaded touring bikes. You have to carry them up a spiral staircase to the bridge, and later you'll have to come back down. This is the confluence of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers on a perfect fall day. Harpers Ferry is old, historic, and beautiful. It was made famous, of course, by John Brown's raid. A fervent abolitionist, Brown and some like-minded men seized the federal armory here. He hoped slaves would join him and fight for their freedom. Brown took hostages and sought refuge in this engine house. Troops arrived and most in his group were killed or captured. Brown was hanged. Some people mark Brown's raid as the real beginning of the Civil War. The 165th anniversary of the raid is just a few days away, and reenactors are in town, giving history lessons. Harpers Ferry is quite the tourist stop today. Many historic buildings are now souvenir shops, ice cream parlors, and the like. It's a fun place, and it's great that it's been so well preserved. We know our trip won't last much longer, and we're really trying to take it all in. The towpath has lots of really spectacular scenery, but often the beauty is simple, understated, more like an impressionist painting. No trip here would be complete without a stop at Great Falls. If you ever get here, take the short walk to see and listen to the river as it tumbles over the rocks. It's been a really dry year, and yet the power of the water is remarkable. Our final campsite on the Potomac. We had 3 of them to ourselves. We're gonna miss this. Over the years, we were often asked if we had done this trip, and to be honest, I had often written it off as nothing special. Maybe too popular. But sometimes things are popular because they are special. I was wrong about the Gap and the C&O. The scenery, history, and communities along the way are all reasons to do this ride. And the goodwill from other cyclists made this a journey to remember. Every time we stopped for water or to look at scenery, people would ask if we were okay. We knew if we ever did have a problem, there would be plenty of people willing to help, and that's a great feeling. This trip left Carol and me with lots of great feelings, and a desire to keep on riding. We never did find mile marker 0. So maybe that means we didn't really complete the ride. Might have to try again. But for now, we have a train to catch.